So in this situation, water scarcity is very much recognized issue in the climate change agenda. And if we look into the intended national determined contributions, we can see that 88% of them contain sections on agriculture, and of those, 70% contain an adaptation section, and of those, 79% list water scarcity and water quality as very important. These are quite high figures that show that water scarcity is a key issue in the climate change adaptation agenda. So when we look to the adaptation plans of the different countries, we can see that the adaptation needs may be different. Could be related to the changes in the water availability, could be also to increase the resilience to the incidence of extreme events such as floods and droughts, could be the deterioration of water quality or the need to improve the resilience and adaptive capacity of irrigation systems, what we call climate proofing of irrigation infrastructure. So this graph shows very in a simplistic way how we should incorporate climate change in projects. Climate smart planning is a new demand in water resources projects. Traditionally, climate change is not been incorporated when planning water investment. But the experience shows that addressing risk associated with climate change requires a good understanding of the potential water-related impact. So for that, it's important to know which will be the exposure to climate change, what will be the changes that will be expected, also to know what will be the impact, and very important, to identify the vulnerable categories of rural people which will be more affected to climate change, in order to identify and to assess the different adaptation measures that are better suited for rural population. So the options for adaptations to climate change will necessarily combine different categories of activities. Could be related to infrastructure and investments, could be land, water, and crop management, or it could be also related to policies, institutions, and capacity building. The options for adaptations can be also implemented at different scales, such as farm irrigation schemes, or also national level. It could be implemented in different time scales, short-term, medium-term, and long-term. The cost of these adaptation measures can be different, and also the potential benefits can also be different. So we need to assess all these different categories in order to prioritize and to select the adaptation measures that better fit our context. So just to give you some examples of adaptation measures that can be implemented, I can show you some activities that can be done at farm level. This is not an exhaustive list, but for instance, efficient irrigation technologies to reduce evaporation losses are being a good adaptation measure. On farm water storage, in situ moisture conservation, deficit and supplementary irrigation, the use of drought-resistant varieties, and so forth. At the irrigation scheme, all the measures related to modernization of irrigation infrastructure are also adaptation activities, water storage, the construction of dams to harvest water, or also all what is related to weather information and irrigation advisory services to improve irrigation. And at national level, we can also have more options that relates with policy and investment, such as, for instance, the water allocation or weather forecasting, drought management plans, and early warning system. So the importance of incorporating climate change in investment projects have been recognized by many agencies and developing institutions, and they have drafted some guidelines to provide information on how to incorporate climate change in investment projects. That has been done by FAO, by the Asian Development Bank, and also by the World Plan. But none of these guidelines refer specifically to irrigation. And this is why FAO and IFAD are now implementing a project to adapt small-scale irrigation to climate change, in which the main results will be the elaboration of practical guidelines on how to incorporate climate change in small-scale irrigation. In this project, we are using a specific tool developed by FAO, which is called SHARP. It's a self-evaluation and holistic assessment of climate resilience of farmers and pastoralists, in which we have included an irrigation module to specifically assess the resilience of irrigation systems to climate change. When we talk about climate-smart agriculture, we should also mention mitigation. In general, the options for direct climate change mitigation through irrigation are the same as those of agriculture as a whole, but it is important to mention that irrigated land is more intensively managed, and on average, irrigated agriculture uses greater amounts of inorganic fertilizers. So the efforts to reduce greenhouse gases through improved soil management practices to improve carbon sequestration and also soil water retention are likely to have more impact in irrigated fields. On the other hand, it's important to mention the link between irrigation and energy. Groundwater is used for irrigation on 38% of all irrigated land, and the use of groundwater is expanding because of water scarcity, and the use of groundwater and also other non-traditional water sources such as desalination of water reuse require higher energy requirements, and that includes the use of fossil fuels. So energy consumption for groundwater can be significant. For instance, in India, is responsible for 4 to 6% of the national total emissions. To reverse this impact, many countries are now using renewable solar energy for irrigation, but these systems have also the potential to deplete aquifers, so it needs to be regulated. I would like to finish my presentation just giving 4 key messages. So most of the impact of climate change on agriculture are expected to be in the water cycle. Climate change adaptation in water includes a range of response options related to policies, investments, crop and water management. Climate proofing is key in the design of investment plans. And then it's important to mention that agriculture will first need to respond to non-climatic drivers, such as population growth, urbanization, and economic growth. Thank you.